This just feels like a toy when you drive it. Guys, check this out. 2023 Suzuki Jimny. You can't even get these in the US. This owner actually bought his in Mexico, and that was a whole process in and of itself, and brought it back over here to the States. Really, really popular car. Very hard to find one of these, even overseas. They needed to do a lottery system, and they're only selling a few thousand per year. What a cool car. Now, a very interesting, off-road centric, playful, cheerful, cute little car. And it has a cult following for good reasons, which we're going to get to shortly. This is the GLX trim, which is the higher trim, but in North America, it actually doesn't get a lot of the options that they get overseas. I love this color choice, this kinetic yellow. They actually call it a verde, a green in Mexico. It's like this yellow-green color that's so fitting for the vehicle. You don't want the other options are white, black, and gray, which I don't think are nearly playful enough for a car like this. This is essentially the 4th generation Samurai. Now in the US, we got the 2nd generation Samurai, and we got now essentially the 4th generation Samurai in North America that you have to bring over the border, but we never got the 1st or the 3rd. The Samurai is the nameplate they used for the 1st and 2nd generation, and then they started calling it the Jimny for the 3rd and 4th gens. Now Suzuki did actually import 2 of these to the US. In Pasadena, they had this car show, and it won the 2019 City Car of the Year and World Design Car of the Year. They give that award to 3 cars in each category, and this was one of those 3 for both of them. So let's start her up. Because this car is bought in Mexico, the owner actually has to take it over the border at least once every 12 months. You can technically just cross the border and turn right back immediately, but that is a requirement because this car is registered in Mexico. Let's peek under the hood. The car is powered by a 1.5 liter 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated, pushing out a very impressive 102 horsepower, 98 pound-feet of torque. The car powers the rear wheels when you're in 2-wheel drive mode, and then you have the option to, with the transfer case, put it into 4-wheel drive, with also a low setting. Now, the owner did install these hydraulic struts. Normally you have this right here. The owner did a few things actually, and because the dealer, of course, wanted to do markups and etc., he was able to buy it actually at MSRP, which is $23,250 US, but only under the condition that he bought some dealer installed options. They weren't that expensive though. It all came out to less than $1,000. But the front grille, as an example, normally has these 5 vertical columns with the Suzuki logo in the middle. This one is a dealer installed option upgraded grille, and then the owner thought it would be pretty funny to get these LEDs that are used for oversized vehicles on the front. Owner added this leather bra, as well as these little door edge, or rather door ding guards. What's up, man?
Oh, I'm just admiring it. I haven't seen a Suzuki like that.
Yeah, this is I'm doing a car review, someone else's car, but it's a Jimny.
What is it?
Suzuki Jimny, yeah. So dealer installed these, as well as the little guards around the side views, which is apparently for like branches and such when you're going off-roading. Because it is a Japanese car and because they drive on the opposite side of the road, the rear door opens in this direction because you would be parking on this side. The curb would be here, you'd walk over, open it this way, whereas in the US, most other vehicles actually open the opposite way. The owner installed this ladder, which is hilariously tiny, the roof rack, and the dealer also installed these red mud flaps all around. And if you look inside, there's no wheel well liner, which is pretty interesting. You don't really see that on modern cars. You can see the overspray of the yellow. This car is very much focused on being affordable on cost-cutting measures and just focusing on the bare essentials. Even these plugs, these things right here, they didn't come with that. The owner actually had to install those after he purchased the vehicle. So really focused on saving money with this car. And they even have a K car version, which they call the Sierra in Japan, which is funny because it's called Sierra and yet North America doesn't get it. And the K car version has a 660cc engine, and they don't have the fender flares because it needs to be narrow and fit a certain dimensions. So no fender flares. It doesn't look as off-roady. It doesn't have the off-road styled front bumper either, but It's essentially the same car, the K car version of this. Now opening up the rear, you'll see there isn't much storage space. You got like, what is this, 6 inches of storage space on this shelf. You do have a little toolkit that Suzuki provides, but what you'll find is that this actually lifts up. You can keep things down here, including your little model Jimny of the exact same car that you own, which I love. The owner loves this car and it shows. And this also actually lifts all the way up and out. And when you remove that and lift this up, you have your jack, and if you need to repair a flat, you got what you need there. Now, of course, you can fold these rear seats down, which is going to give you way more usable storage space, because these fold all the way flat, which is nice. Still a very small area, but much more usable in this configuration. You can actually get this in Europe as a commercial vehicle where they don't have rear seats. They have a little cage, and part of that is actually emissions reasons. That's the rumor as to why they couldn't bring this to the US, is because of emissions. And same with Europe, the reason why it has to be a commercial vehicle instead. So with that being said, let me first try to fit in the back, and then we'll take this for a spin. So on the right hand side, you would tilt this up, and it's a 2-step process where you then slide the chair forward. And on the opposite side, it is just a 1-step process. When you go here, and the whole thing comes up. Oh, now I am, 6'1". You know, it's small and cozy, but based on how I saw other reviews, this isn't as bad as I'm expecting, you know? It's like this kind of juts into your seat space, and I'm hitting it with my butt, but it's definitely better than my GR86, which obviously is not saying much. So there is the rear space. And now, let's take it for a spin. And yet still so charming and lovable. You have a leather wrapped steering wheel, not the best leather by any means, but you have this little grab handle, which is adorable. You got cloth seats, which feel totally fine and adequate. It feels very 90s. I mean, the outside styling is very 90s. The interior feels very 90s. We do have Apple CarPlay, which is a very nice touch on any modern vehicle. You got climate control. This, the owner added. It looks OEM. It's actually a really nice touch. Right here, adding a little armrest and more storage space, as well as these. Owner also added this right here as a little tray. They really focus on just the bare essentials. Even the key. I mean, this key is straight out of the 90s. Look at that. They really focused on just the bare essentials here. So you have the climate control, you have the CarPlay, but you don't need all the additional bells and whistles. You don't need the adaptive cruise control, which actually they do offer overseas. But this is really a back to basics vehicle. You do have hill descent right here. You have leveling for your headlights. You do have the 2 high, the 4 high, and the 4 low. It's really just what you need and nothing more. And we're off. This car only weighs 2,500 pounds. Super light. And you can feel that immediately upon getting in. The steering has a very light feel. This is of course an EPS. And the steering ratio is very slow. It takes a lot of motion at the wheel to get you pointing in a different direction. And there's also a little bit of slop to the wheel. It's not the most precise thing, but again, that's what you expect for a car like this. Yeah, definitely a little bit of slop, very light steering. It feels peppy. I mean, 100 horsepower, 100 pound-feet of torque. It's not fast by any means, but because it's so light, it just feels playful. It feels cheery, cheerful. A lot of body lean. Red line is around 6250 RPM. But that's not what this car is about. This car is just about cruising. It is actually very off-road capable, however. The approach angle is actually 49 in the front, 37 in the rear, We have solid live axles, both front and rear. And the owner tells me he gets a lot of attention driving this car around, especially in this color. Straight up time machine. I love that he has the bra in the front because even that feels so 90s. Everything is in kilometers and Celsius metric units because this is from Mexico, of course. Very upright seating posture. You feel pretty high up even though this car is so small. And because the steering, or rather because the suspension is so soft and floaty, it really accentuates the feeling of being on top of the road, being on top of, you're not really in the car, you're even on top of the car. You feel quite high up. The lightness is just so readily apparent. Any acceleration, any braking, any steering, of course, but even over the bumps, you can just feel the lightness. It feels like this car can blow away in the wind. Not the best tuned suspension. It's a little bit crashy over some of these bumps, despite being very soft and jello-y. It's not terribly uncomfortable by any means, but you can tell this is not the highest quality dampers that they're using. The dealers also installed a rear sensor and rear view camera, which is a nice touch. Again, adding to the drivability of a modern vehicle. Even small things like when you lightly press the turn signal stalk, just the 3 flashes, that's something that I didn't have in my old car, right? Those little things do make it more drivable and more livable every day. We do have cruise control. It's not adaptive, although you can get that overseas. And you can also option this with either the automatic transmission, which this obviously has, or a 6-speed manual. Throttle pedal is actually pretty sensitive, so it makes the car feel more peppy, and it's also pretty willing to downshift at pretty light throttle input. See, this handles over some of these turns. Brake pedal is super squishy, no feel. This just feels like a toy when you drive it. Yeah, super light, so much body roll back and forth. It's really interesting because normally these kinds of elements would bother me when I'm driving a car. If something has poor body control, the steering has no feedback, it's really slow, has some play, and the throttle and brake being pretty vague, those would normally bother me. But because this car has this cheerful, playful spirit, it adds to the toy nature of it. And it's actually so endearing. I'm falling in love with this car. It's so fun, it's so cool, it's so unique. Something different you don't see every day here in the US, especially in the US, because we don't have that many small cars. Super light steering, no feedback, no loading up at all. Very numb, but that's okay. Yeah, this just feels like a toy, it feels like a go-kart. It almost feels unsafe. I'm sure that this is not the safest thing to be in. In fact, when I get out, I'll show you how thin the door is. That might also be part of the reason why we can't have one in the US. It could be safety regulations not meeting our safety standards. Man, what a fun, playful car. Look at that turning radius. This car is only 140 inches long. That makes it 4.5 feet shorter than a BMW 3 Series. This thing is tiny. Another very 90s thing about this car is that you have this glass house effect, and there's just so much glass all around. Visibility is fantastic. Obviously, that's going to be a factor in terms of safety. But it's taking all of the nice elements from the 90s and transporting that to the modern era with things like CarPlay, with these little touches here and there. Oh, nice. Evora. Even the controls here, they're making it look rugged and outdoorsy and yet kind of cute at the same time. It's very playful. Love the spirit of this car. And it's only $23,000. What a steal. Man, anytime I see a Lotus, I just get so excited for my Emira. Even those Evoras look great. Power! All right, that was giving it the beans. So when giving it the beans, like I'm going flat out right now. What you realize is that the car is so close to its limit just puttering around town because that throttle tip-in is so aggressive, it's so sensitive that just driving around town, you're pretty close to the car's limits, which is why it feels peppier than you would think for 100 horsepower. What a special car. So cool. See here with the doors, how thin it is? I would not want to get in a T-bone in this car. Big thanks to Miguel, the awesome owner, for letting me review his car. Oh, one other thing I want to say, if you'll see, he got the JDM license plate up front, which I like, and matches the rear one, which is the actual legitimate one that he uses in Mexico. If you are in Vegas and you want me to review your car, then please reach out, leave a comment down below, or hit me up on our website, jubbalandcars.com. Much love, my friends. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in that next one.